The master ceremony of the session today, and we will start with a welcoming address by our new director. Please take a seat. And the floor, and welcome her with a round of applause, our director Marianne Nannings.
Well, I'm very honored to say welcome to you all on behalf of the whole academy, the whole university. It's a very special day for you all because some of you, well, came from all over the world to follow here a program, to become a professional. And some of you have come from a European country to The Hague to follow a program, and also a part of you are Dutch students, so they know, you know how it is to live in Holland, but you have chosen to mix with other countries, other students from other countries and other cultural backgrounds. So I think that will give an extra dimension to your studying program for your personal development, etc. So I wish you all a very warm welcome. I will give a short presentation in which I will follow this program. I'm not going to read it out loud, that's a little bit boring. But you see that I'm starting from all over the world, and so I'm zooming in more and more to this program, what you are following. Of course, I'm going to welcome you on behalf of our board of directors. We've got 3 members of the board. Rob Brons is the president of the board. Susanna Menendez and Jan Linssen are members of the board. They are very important for us, especially Susanna Menendez, because she has warm feelings for this academy. It's also her background, her professional background, and well, we've got a good exchange of what's about to be a student here and what's about to be a teacher here. Talking about the teachers, I'd like to introduce to you some teachers who are in this aula, and of course, not every teacher can be here. But I'm going to mention from each program, from each international program at least, the name of the team leaders. You can see them, and then I would like to ask when the teachers of that program are in this room, please rise. So first of all, the program of public management. The team leaders are Maarten Haverkamp and Linda Rijgrok. Please, when there are teachers here, are there teachers from public management? I can't see anyone rise, but for instance, I saw Rick. Rick is there. Okay, welcome Rick Ernst. Rick is very important. He organized this whole introduction program for the new students. Then we've got Mario Flips, is from the program of Management and Healthcare, but there's no new starting, so I think he won't be here this afternoon. And then we've got the program Safety and Security Management Studies. The team leader is Chloe Lambert. And please, team leader and teachers, rise so we can see your face. Are there... Okay, thank you. And, well, we had just before this program the introduction of the Dutch law HBO Rechten. And the team leaders, I'm only going to mention their names, Barbara Heesen-Gerritsen and André Korenhoff. But then I'd like to introduce to you the team leaders from international and European law and also the teachers. Please, will you rise? But first of all, Ernst van Bemmelen van Gent and Hilde Kadenau. Yes. Well, as you can see, there are lots of teachers here present, and I think that is also an example for the large number of students who will start the program of law this year. So law, every program is very important and special for us, and law, well, has the largest number of students. Today, I'd like to embark the road of your future from my hand. I think it's a milestone. Especially, of course, for all the people who have moved this way to The Hague, to the country of Holland, the Netherlands. I think that's rather a shift in what you are going to feel, what you are going to learn already because of the fact you left your home, your background. Some of you maybe brought their parents with them for the first week to, well, have a smooth landing in this strange country. Well, I think everybody has his own story, and it is a very important step in your future. The city of The Hague is, well, as you can mention, it has an attractive factor, an X factor for you, because you came here to follow a study. The Hague is a very interesting city. Would like to mention some characteristics which are very special for this city. There are lots of lawyers of governance here in the neighborhood, but also in the municipality. And national and international, The Hague has an important role. All aspects of the trias politica are here, how do you call it? They are working from The Hague. I think you have already learned something about it in the high school, but the legislative power, executive power, and adjudicative power are, of course, all separated, but they have all visiting here in The Hague. So it's important. Also, when you are following your program, we've got very good connections. And once in a while, we have also teachers who are coming for some special colleagues, colleges, and you meet them. It's very important. The Hague has some promises: peace and justice. Of course, the Peace Palace is a very good symbol here in this city. I don't know whether you've already saw that beautiful building, which exists this year, 100 years. It's worthwhile to take a look at it. It is very special for The Hague, and all over the world people know that beautiful Peace Palace. So that you can see is a very unique selling point for The Hague. And that has, affects our university, and especially our academy. The Hague University is a rather large university with around about 25,000 students. And this academy is one of the largest academies in the Hague University. We are offering around about 50 programs of The Hague bachelors. So that's a rather a very big variety. Developing of talents is very important for us. And you are just going to start a study just with you want to be a very good professional. And we want to offer you that. We want to help you with that. Become who you want to be in your professional future. This Academy of Public Management, Safety and Law is the place where your program belongs. Well, we've got 4 programs, I already mentioned them before, and I will promise you that during your program, during your study time, you will meet also other students from other programs. So already when you are looking around now in this room, you will see students. Some of them you will meet in the classroom, and some of them you will meet long time, some of them short time for special themes. Well, of course, we've got an Academy support office We call it in Dutch BOO. Well, it is a kind of office for you, also with a front office when you have questions about exam or something like that, you can go there. We want to give you very good, high qualified programs. We want to give you exchange programs. And the degree what you will become in the future, that is very important and will give you the opportunity to be a professional. Well, something about the learning program. Of course, our teachers are very good experts in the content of the professions. They've all worked and have professional skills, so they can tell you about it during your program. You can read some words who are very important, and when I mention them now, I think maybe you have a lot of questions. Professional profile, what is it? Competence matrix, what is it? Yes, you will be confronted with lots of new words, and you have to learn them to become acquainted. Our vision on education is also very important because all our teachers have followed a program in education. So when you are, for instance, a lawyer, you are not special, also not automatically a very good teacher. That's, you have to learn it. And all our teachers followed a program and got a degree in giving education. So the mix of content, professional content and educational content, that's what we're going to offer you in our study programs. Well, of course, the bachelor degree is very important and gives you the good card to start your career. And the bachelor degree is national and international, worthwhile. So it doesn't matter, it should not matter if you are following it here. It is also worthwhile in each country all over the world. It's very important. Well, of course, your first job will be a platform for further learning. So I think this period, the 4 years who are in front of you, is of course a period of very intensive learning, but it doesn't stop when you've got your diploma. Each professional has to learn day and day, also me, also the teachers, because knowledge changes. Knowledge changes very fast. But very important is, of course, that when you've got the exam, you did the exam very well and you've got your diploma, that's the starting point to start your career. Then you can gain a salary. And of course, if you want, you can go further, study further, for instance, to get a master level. But whatever you will choose, it is a ticket for lifelong learning, in practice or at a university. It's just up to you. Well, once again, this is an important moment for all of you in different ways. And I think you will remember this moment after years and years. And I hope you'll get contacts here with students and teachers with a long period, they are staying a long time. So not only for today, not only for your study, but also perhaps also for later. So you can remember that it was worthwhile, that I met you during your study. Use everything that we offer you. Some teachers can give you more help when you ask them. And when you are hesitating, especially the first year, the first half year, I think, is very important, especially when you moved here to The Hague from another country. I think it will last a while when you get used here. Everything is different. How can I buy a mobile phone? How can I come a bicycle? Everything is new, so it is more challenging for the students from abroad, I think, than the Dutch students. So I would like to ask the Dutch students also help your colleagues, students from other countries, because everybody needs a start-up. It's very important, and it would be very pity when those starting up problems would give you a delay in your study. That's not good. And I would like to ask everybody, think every day, what do I need to follow this program well, with good success? Do I need some extra help? Can I go to a teacher? Can I go to a student? Pronounce your questions. Don't be, don't let it go. Don't let it slip away. This is important. And your study time is, of course, I hope it is fun and you learn a lot, but it's also important to do the right things. So when you hesitate or something like that, we would like to give you help. Well, at this moment, I think it's enough for my opening words. I would like to finish with wish you all very, very good luck with your study. I hope it's good.
Thank you, Ms. Nunning, for your warm words. And it's indeed a huge pleasure to see you all. You settled in. There are a few more seats on the first balcony, or actually on the second balcony, which you can reach by the same stairs. And the honor is now on my side to say a few words on a more substantive topic that relates to your study, and that is also of special interest for those attending this session from later years, because we try to transform this welcoming session also to students who are in the second and third and fourth year. And I did see a few students from the second year, and do I see a year 3 student? Yes, and even a year 4 student? No, they're busy graduating and interning and so forth. So let me say a few words on art and your profession, and I try to develop a sort of quasi-English word to cover all your 3 professions, be it a public manager, be it a safety and security manager, or be it a legal professional. And all 3 have something to do with the sort of buzzword called governance. So I came up with something like governance professional, which is not an existing word in the Oxford Dictionary yet. But let's see what happens. And let me tell you about art. 18th century, Mr. Handel, to glorify a peace treaty made in Utrecht. Mr. Handel was a great pop artist of his age, in the time before So You Think You Can Sing and Dance and other talent shows. This was the entertainment of the time. And he first got a career in making Italian operas. That was in Europe of the 18th century, the central theme and the popular music. Hard, high pitches, castrato singers, very popular. And it was a time, and art was perceived in those days as expressing the sentiments and the emotions and the dominant culture of the time. And Mr. Handel moved to other audiences, and this was his first piece as an assignment of the royal family of England, who in 1713, 300 years ago, just finished a participation in a European or worldwide war the Spanish Succession War, which was concluded with a treaty in Utrecht. And the importance of art is unchanged since then, because even nowadays, art is still an expression of the dominant sentiments and political views and dominant religious views of a culture. To the extent that when you are, as an artist, outside that dominant culture, you will be prosecuted or chased. And in the clashes between cultures, sometimes, for instance, little internet movies about, for instance, Islam, when they go viral, they influence the behavior of people in other states, where, to the extent of demonstrations and killings and attacking embassies, there's upheaval around pieces of art. And today I will compare the impact of art with the impact of the stuff you will make, the legal products, the management products you will make in your career. But let's dive a little bit deeper in that Treaty of Utrecht. Utrecht is a beautiful city, not far away from The Hague. And normally on these days we glorify The Hague because it's one of the most important cities of the Netherlands in respect of your respective studies. But today, 300 years after the treaty, I thought, let's give Utrecht a chance. It's a beautiful town, and let's have a little look at a promo video they developed. Wait a minute. Now it's not. Whoa. I did some exercises, but no. No. The easy way. Sorry.
Once upon a time, Europeans were great in making art and war. There was even art about war. The 30 Years' War.
The Polish-Ottoman War. The Portuguese Restoration War. The First and Second English Civil War. The First, Second, and Third Anglo-Dutch War. The War of the...
And when King Charles II of Spain died in 1700, war became an even more serious business. Europeans have fought all over the world. Canada, Cuba, India, South America, and of course, on every centimeter of Europe. In earlier centuries, peace was only restored if one guy won a battle and the loser was stripped of all of his belongings.
We won, I killed all of you, the war is over. No, you didn't.
But in the 18th century, you could win battles, but still not win and stop the war itself. So, after 10 years of World War, the people of Europe decided it was time to see if maybe talk could stop the war. But should they meet in England?
No, it is not bien to me there. I hate the Anglais.
Or in France?
Oh no, we don't care for their cheese.
Maybe a somewhat more neutral place. Already known for its somewhat liberal view of life and trade, Holland it would be. Their goal? To create a balance of power. By talking. Couple by couple, the representatives tried to settle their differences at the Utrecht Town Hall. The negotiations lasted for over 18 months.
Tell my wife I will be back in a few months.
Negotiations were tough, and to create a pleasant atmosphere, there was a lot of entertainment of high and low culture.
Tell my wife I am still busy.
And finally, the last signature was set. This time, peace lasted. And more importantly, a new model was created to solve conflicts in the following centuries. And some things have evolved well. Now, we have the European Union. Much like the Treaty of Utrecht, it's a means to keep things in balance, in peace. And to celebrate all of that, the whole of Utrecht, the government, corporations, and individuals have joined forces to create a big cultural event that will simply not stop. We are looking to the future of Europe, where culture, dialogue, and peace are one.
What was 1713 all about? It was one of the changes from a balance between states that emerged from the earlier peace treaty in 1668, which produced this map of Europe. And so as you can see, the size of the various countries were a little bit in balance. And that is one of the expressions of the word balance. And the other element of it is who is the ruling family or who is the ruling bunch of people of such a country, and is that the same as in another country? And it had to do with the old habit, but it's still not away, like in North Korea and in countries like the Netherlands and England and Denmark and a few others, that this idea that a child of a ruler is entitled to a ruling seat was very dominant in those ages, in those centuries. And through those family links, it could happen that the countries were, in a sense, owned by one family, and that was then the reason for starting wars to avoid that, because big countries were perceived as inclined to overshadow the neighboring countries and ultimately conquering these other countries, occupying it and taking it over. What you see is also a balance between countries where Christianity is a dominant religion and countries where Islam was a dominant religion. So in a sense, nothing changed too much when you compare to nowadays. And in 1713, we moved to the situation where France and Spain, by the Treaty of Utrecht, agreed not to own the crown, the ruling position of both Spain and France, to avoid that concentration of power. And it was the emergence of the world power of the United Kingdom. The hue of the United Kingdom was of 1700, where the crown of Scotland and England were combined, and it was the beginning of the spreading of the wings of the Great Britain, Northern Ireland, or more precisely the United Kingdom. And that makes this European history relevant for all of you and for all world citizens, because due to the colonization in later centuries of large parts of the world, and influencing through that occupation of India and Australia and Canada and America and Spain earlier with South America, they influenced the daily lives of everybody until the day of today, including, which is of a later date, the story of Syria, where after the First World War, the big powers like France and the UK and a few others decided to draw those lines of the borders of those countries in a way that they are now. And that is why this little history is also relevant for you, because you will deal with those boundaries and you will ask one of many questions, and one of many questions is, why are these boundaries as they are? And if we have the freedom to think about those boundaries, what type of criteria could we develop to maybe redesign those boundaries? And what are then decisive points of view? Should we look at the color of the hair of the people, or their religion, or their family ties, or their language, or their religion? Intriguing question, where in your classes, in the various programs, you will dwell on that. The end result of the peace treaty of Utrecht 300 years ago was that Spain got a royal family, France kept its own, England became a world power. And here you see also those countries that were not yet a full-swing centralized country, a little bit like the European Union and other federal and quasi-federal initiatives in the world. And Italy and Germany were at the time potentially a little bit similar. And in your classes, your lectures will deal with that. And then one of those hopes of stability, be it in an international treaty or be it in a policy arrangement on neighborhood level, where similar emotions of xenophobia and jealousy and hatred can play a role. And also this 1713 peace treaty was not very long-lasting, because the Spanish king tried it again a few years later to conquer neighboring states. And then, the mayor of The Hague is very grateful that I introduced The Hague again on a slide. Then in 1720 in The Hague, there was another round of peace treaties to settle the new round of warfare around this same Spanish country and Spanish ruling party. Again, art was a means of communicating and expressing and framing the event. And framing means that you give it an emotional and cultural context, that you glorify the winning party, and that you make their ships extra beautiful and shiny and in the middle point. And with that, art in the past and nowadays influences our minds and our opinions on events. Keep that in mind. What is important about that century is an English word that has a French root, and that it sounds like ancien régime, or old regime, or old status quo. And in that century, the French king Louis XIV, we all know from Hollywood movies and from the Versailles Palace, south of France, he was the sort of symbolic person of that ancien régime. And he was part of a nobility that was 0.2% of the population, and together with a 0.1% of the population being religious leaders, they, the clergy and the nobility, ruled that country. And that is an euphemism of milking the country. Having the ordinary people, you and me, work hard, without machines, and pay taxes up to the degree that you are in sheer poverty. They were as bad in bookkeeping as current governments are. So, like today, they run out of money once in a while and had a sort of bankruptcy type of occurrence, and then they had to be bailed out, just like countries nowadays happen. The ancien régime, then and now, is always confronted with revolutions. And the revolutions of the 18th century are quite special, since they produced concepts, words, that are still our daily substance of your courses. All the lectures, half of the time, use concepts: liberty, democracy, separation of power, and all kinds of management and public management, government, structural approaches developed in that century. And there are 3 revolutions that we can distinguish now that we are 300 years later. At the time, they do not come with a nice label, like here is the revolution, like nowadays. But when we look back, we can distinguish them. The first one is this intellectual revolution, where concepts like democracy were written down, discussed, and further developed. What does it mean? What is the purpose? What is the goal? And you will basically crawl into the brain of those thinkers of those century and do the same exercise again as part of your programs. And the good news is you will earn some credits with that. Then we have the Industrial Revolution. And actually, scholars claim that the Industrial Revolution is still around us. And the latest addition are all the tablets that are now replacing the pen and paper your predecessor students used to make notes. Mobile phones, and so forth. The importance of the Industrial Revolution is very simple, and that is that 98% of the population was not anymore needed to produce the primary goods and services we live from, food and other services. Because of the machines, people could specialize in other things, because you only needed a few people to produce the food to feed the population. So that is sort of the bottom line of those revolutions. And you can imagine, and in secondary education, you had other examples. And the last one, the last revolution, is on a political level. And we call that a revolution, and not just yet another example of overthrowing a ruling family or party. We call it a revolution because those values developed in that century, like freedoms, freedom of speech, and the principle of democracy, are the ingredients of those revolutions. And that is why we call them, with sort of positive tone, revolutions, rather than overthrowing a regime. Because it was, after all, when we talk about the American Revolution, the overthrowing of the British rule in the colonies in the United States of America. So the Brits were kicked out. But we call it the American Revolution because it brought a shift, and that is the key, a shift from the ancien régime, the old order, where ordinary people had no influence on their lives, to a new order where, with the help of professionals like you, a sort of brighter, better future for the people was provided. And we all know that only words do not immediately produce the goodies of those values. We all know, and we are all frustrated, that even until the day of today, when we read about the revolutions, in Egypt, for instance, that the goodie package that was promised by that revolution is not visible yet. But maybe, after a while, we see progress in the light of the concepts developed in the 18th century. I pick one of those revolutions, the American one, and translate it to one of those products, one of those objects you make, be it called a treaty, as an example. And the Treaty of Paris was 2 pages, and in Article 1 it says that the United States of America are a recognized sovereign nation. And that was signed by the Brits, by the King of the United Kingdom. And that article is still in force. That means that in the classes on international law, you will learn that when the United Kingdom would invade the United States of America, then they would break Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris of 1763. Because there they agreed to the sovereignty and the state integrity of that new state. And in that treaty, many other clauses are included on the 2 pages, in total 10 articles. And they are always a mix of agreements on a sort of international level and agreements that go up to the level of the citizens in those states or in those territories. Examples. One of the clauses says that the prisoners of war should be treated nicely. Now we call that humanitarian law, and you will deal with that in your courses. And one of the other treaties was that the contractual obligations of the parties, sellers, buyers of goods and services, ranging from cannons, rifles to food, that those contractual obligations should be honored. So the fact that the two states had a war, and that the fact that those war was ended by a treaty, was translated to the relationship between these citizens. And then, in public management, you see that it's one thing to write down such a two-pager, and that's another thing to actually live up to it. So when you end a war, you are still angry at the other side. We know that when you end a war, you still dislike the former enemy. So even when you're by treaty or by contract obliged to honor legal obligations, or to arrange your government in such a way that, let's say, the effect of the peace is reached, like that one of the states neighboring a big lake was ordered in the treaty to give fishing rights to the neighbor, the former enemy. And then you see that people obstruct that end result of such a treaty, and that they do not pay their debts, and that they do not give fishery rights to the neighbor. And then new rounds of negotiations and new rounds of governance involvement is needed to achieve that. And again, art was part of the deal, with a little anecdote that the Brits were so angry that they lost their colony, that they didn't want to show up to pose for the artists. So Mr. West, who painted this painting, could not finish the painting. So this is a little example where art, maybe art as a sort of side note, expresses the emotion and the cultural identity of the time. Characteristics of these events, and I already indicated that, include human behavior that is still among us, and that includes, let's say, tensions. That includes the inability of people to accept others, and others in the way that they are different from you yourself, in terms of language, in terms of skin color, in terms of religion. And the extreme forms of that we label like xenophobia. But also slavery is a big issue. In those treaties I mentioned, the world was as awkward that they, let's say, made a deal who was allowed to make which slave trade. And then luckily, at a certain stage, some form of civilization came in and that was abolished. But we all know, and projects and lectures will deal with that there's still not free labor and human trafficking going on as we speak. So those are topics then and now that play a big role. A huge role for economics. The mechanism that the ability to earn an income or to own property is influencing the behavior of people towards each other and between states. Also a big issue at that time, but no one wanted to talk about it, but luckily enough we want to talk about it now, is the differences between men and women, gender issues. And many of your lectures and classes will deal with that. What is the influence of these quite often complex tensions are there on public mechanisms, governance mechanisms? So these are the topics. And then you appear in this picture on or in various ways. One way is the fact that around those themes, according to your choice, with the degree program you follow, you will earn a living, you will call yourself a professional in this field. That's step one. Secondly, you, in the courses as indicated, will meet those themes. Sometimes in a footnote we will tell you Well, since 300 years we try to figure out what it means. Liberty, ownership, democracy. Sometimes we do not tell you that, and I invite you here and now always to look for more information. The internet is a provider of a lot of valuable and true information. And to once in a while, like I do in this little speech, go to the history and see, hey, how was that in the past? What was the influence of those thinkers in that territory then? How is that maybe European thought exported to other states, up to and including China? How and when did that happen? And how were regional cultural thinkings overshadowed or replaced or not replaced by these types of ideas? Because these questions will be asked by your customers also later on. You will experience during your program and later on that you are also a professional on that crossroad, on that shift, I must say, from the ancien regime, let's say the old order, in whatever shape or form it comes, to a new order. So partly employers want to pay for you because they hope that you can help them move to that new order. And the tragedy is that not always everybody knows what that new order should look like. So based on the package of concepts, we will test your creativity to see whether you have good ideas. And there's one certainty: at a certain moment, you will be the senior in your field and in your surrounding. And then people will look at you and ask you, okay, tell me, how do we solve this? And then, well, I hope that higher education, our programs, ignite a little bit a sort of desire to make the best possible future out of that situation, and not necessarily to move back to whatever form of ancien regime. So be curious, ask questions, and mobilize rational, analytical, and rigorous thinking. That is very central in higher education, because those solutions, as the little promo movie from the Utrecht piece shows, should be developed with not muscle solutions. So you're not in military academy. So we are not training your muscles. That is the other solution to problems. And then consequently, we have to develop, like in a fitness club, your brains. And the key word there is critical thinking or rigorous thinking or proper thinking or logical thinking, many different words trying to say the same. And then we are confident that you will be able to influence those processes, that you will influence those outcomes. Like an artist, you will influence the opinion of people, the emotion of people by the words and the paperwork you produce. Secondly, you will choose, and it's sometimes a little tragedy, you will choose a side. Because many solutions are produced by two parties in first instance opposing each other and then agreeing on an outcome. And then those parties hire you in whatever capacity, a policy advisor, legal professionals, security manager. And consequently, you have to choose the side of that employer. And quite often, in such a debate, they make a little caricature out of that. Caricature ranging from ancien regime to progressive. So either you're on the side of the government or on the side of the citizen, or you're on the side of the employer or on the side of the employee, or you're part of the more socialist-oriented movement or more the liberal or the progressive movement and the more conservative movement. And I hope that when you are in that situation, that you constantly think back of this moment or any other lecture that somehow triggers your enthusiasm, to realize that on the other side, the person was in similar higher education, was also in the same fitness club to develop the brains, and is most likely, with other words, aiming at a similar outcome UI. We can offer you only a limited set of products, of things you can see. We can teach you to speak, and we can teach you to read, we can teach you to write, and that is about it. And that is why we call many of our products, we call them deliverables. We try to, in the various programs, make it a little bit more down to earth. And like you say, okay, be an artist in creating a contract, and be very skilled in making a policy document. Be very professional in designing a sort of safety policy to secure a building like this, in terms of physical dangers, fire, so that people are not sitting on stairs, or more the spying, terrorism, privacy issues around ICT. You will be hired for new situations. So the moment you get your degree, you can basically sell your books, because your employer will ask you to solve something that is not in your book. And that's a little bit a tragedy, because we prepare our classes, we dive in little histories, we tell you stories, and then in the professional field, you need other insights, you need other solutions than they are in the book. But this is what we do, and in the last couple of centuries it works out. By strengthening your brain muscle, you will be able to come up with creative solutions. And then in producing that, there is a tendency to also share with you ethical and aesthetic standards. And that is basically the same discussion I just shared with you between the ancien régime and the innovative solution. And depending on the sort of branch you are in, those ethical standards are more articulated or not. But they are articulated in many United Nations instruments you will be confronted with in your studies, be it the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, be it the United Nations Millennium Goals, and similar instruments that set out, let's say, the sort of definition of that more prosperous, whatever that may mean, future of mankind. And the good news, you can make a living out of doing that, and that pays the bill, and that's also very important. So I would like to thank you for listening to this. I promise you that these themes will be in your first year, second year, third year, fourth year courses. I'm very pleased that with this meeting, the academic year started properly, that we had a chance to look at each other, and we are not yet aware of who is of which program, and I like that we are a little bit unaware of that. And then we will organize academy events where, again, the whole auditorium will be filled. Now we will move to the respective events of the individual programs. And that means that, let me see, the public management program. Is there a student from public management who can tell me what the next station is? Yes? And your name is?
Anna Ogendorn, I'm second years. For the public management students, the next room will be 509, and it will be an oval. And if you're having trouble finding that, there are five of us who will guide you there. So come to us when you are having trouble finding that.
And you are standing where, or are they in the audience that we can look at them?
We are standing there. And
with a red cap and a white t-shirt, annex flag, yes?
And there will also be students standing at the second balcony.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. That was the public management program, or international public management program. The safety and security management studies Is there a student volunteer who is studying SSMS? Fingers. And you know where to go afterwards? Not really. I'm a little bit in despair. Yes? Oval 4. Oval 4, 1.7. 1, 4, 7. Connect to that student. And at what time? At what time? 2 o'clock? Okay. So that's sort of new. And then the law students are expected in half an hour in this auditorium. So allow the other students to go to their respective things. And I see all the law students in this auditorium at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much.